we did
We're
this
gonna have to do it this way.
one other time.
Okay, you're live.
We are. How about that?
Excellent.
Cool. All right. Well, they're watching the sausage being made.
Yeah, they're watching the sausage being made.
Okay. All right. Well, producer Heather says we are live. There's some doubt about that, but we're going to go as if we are. She's giving me the thumbs up. So you obviously can see Dr. Belo here with me. So that means we're in the Ermel laboratories. Funny story about Ermel when she was looking it up, I had transposed Madigan with Merle. So I'm thinking Edward R. Merle, not Edward R. Madigan. And so she was having a hard time finding it on Google, but we finally figured out the error of my ways. So welcome everyone to the season finale episode of season 5 of Ask the Agronomist, and keeping with we were just talking about this.
Yeah.
We think this is our 4th year.
Yep.
You and I together, and Dr. Belo. I mean, a lot of us are going to be sad when you decide to retire someday, but it will happen someday. I'm not going to ask you when.
It's not set yet, Lance, but my wife would like to know.
Yeah. Well, we won't ask you to tell the world before you tell her. So, but one of these days you are going to retire, and you'll still be famous, and you'll still be speaking, and you'll probably make more money in retirement than you do now. But you're always welcome as my season-ending guest as long as you want to be. Appreciate the 30-plus year relationship that you and I have had. You're a great fun to work with, and a great person to have as an asset for agriculture and agronomy and physiology, and as your students as well. So I know you love to talk about your students. So what's going on in your lab these days?
I do, Lance. Well, let me thank the audience for starting a little late, and let me thank you and Heather for coming to the University of Illinois to do this.
You bet.
Final event. I know you had to travel here. We're in a conference room in Ermel. By the way, we're in the exact conference room that our students take their preliminary and defense exams.
Nice.
So there's been some sweat in this
so
room.
they get kind of shaky when they come in.
Oh yeah, that board, man. I don't know if you and I'll get to use it today, but I know they have. So I think our audience knows that I have no actual skill, Lance, when it comes to doing equipment, but my students do. And so we do our research as part of graduate student training. And I've been blessed to work with some really fantastic students over the years. But by the way, Lance, this is my 40th year of being a professor. Started in January, it'll be 41. It's hard to imagine. It's gone fast.
Yeah. So
as you know,
for me, March will be 33 for me with Bayer or Monsanto and Bayer. And I kind of have a goal of working 40 years if they'll have me that long.
Well, okay.
I always thought 40 was a nice round number and kind of a cool number. But I might be like you. When I get to 40, if I love it as much as I do now, I may just keep going.
Again, those students stay the same age. You and I get older, and but that at least keeps me thinking young. So, I probably mentioned this before, Lance, but I had you in class in 1992.
You did.
I'm not going to say what kind of student you were, but
well, not as good a student as the guy that runs the College of Ag now. Who
yeah,
was also
the
in that
dean
class.
was in class too.
That's right.
Pretty famous group there, Lance. Back in '92.
Some of you have done things in your life. I don't know what's wrong with me, but
I mean, you're the agronomist. I'm the researcher, and as I like to tell the audience that we do the research with graduate students, and so therefore our research focus sort of ebbs and flows a little bit based on the interest of the graduate students. People always say to me, "Hey, what are you working on now? And what's the next new thing that really excites you?" And I think you've had him on the program, Sam Laskonich, one of our PhD students. And he's looking below ground.
Right.
Oddly enough, Lance,
he's a harder worker than I am. Root work is bad.
That is hard.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, Lance, I like below ground stuff for some reason. And if you think about the root system, it's sort of the last unexplored horizon when it comes to crop production. And what Sam's done is he's developed a pretty good high throughput way to dig. We use a shovelomics approach and characterize hybrid root architecture.
Didn't he even kind of use his name as
He
the acronym?
did. He
That's
did.
a little bit.
It is.
I don't know
Yeah,
what
that's
that is.
it's called
that's pretty
it's
bold.
called the SAM rating
That's
for surface area, angle, and mass.
Right.
I mean, it's actually got 2 A's, and his name only has 1.
Yeah.
But
Sounds
I
the
thought
same.
that was slick, naming him
Yeah.
after himself.
Yeah.
And so what we discover, Lance, is roots can differ in their surface area. The angle, an angle really affects the depth, and they can differ in their mass. And guess what? Those 3 traits are not related. They're actually independent. And I don't think I have to tell you, but you would be shocked at variation in root architecture that exists among commercial hybrids. Apparently, they're selected for yield and stability, and not their root architecture.
Right. If they don't fall over, that's good enough for us.
Yeah,
That's
but I
kinda what we look at.
don't have to tell you that the best hybrids root lodge. And I think that's because, by the way, you pay for roots and yield.
Right.
And so, it sort of makes sense to us that if we have a so-called offensive or racehorse hybrid, it tends to be the smaller rooted variety that has a tendency to root lodge, and the defensive one is it's got a lot of surface area, a lot of wide roots and mass, and it does well everywhere. So I'm really excited about that work because I think we might be able to help position hybrids for, certainly certain geographic regions, soil types, and even better yet, hopefully to management.
I've always felt that since we got the board here,
let's use the board,
I'll draw a
Lance.
picture. So since we're talking about roots, so your angle would be kind of the angle that they're coming out of the crown.
Yep, correct.
Versus over here.
Yep, narrow or wide.
Yeah,
Yep.
right. So this would represent a wide out here. This would represent a narrow.
You got it, man. Good artist.
Regardless of root mass, size, and depth, I kind of think angle relates to lodging resistance, because to me it makes sense that standing like this, I'm less likely to fall over than if I'm standing like this. I don't know if that's right or not. I mean, the mass is going to be important too, but to me, these vertical ones that maybe go deeper,
help anchor the plan is what you're saying.
Well, I actually think these do, because to me, if you put guy wires on a tower, they don't go down right next to it; they go out away from it, and so to me, these horizontal ones are less likely to lodge than the vertical ones, but I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I'm not sure we've had enough data to actually ascertain that yet, Lance. I do know that angle is probably the most heritable of the traits, very consistent, and I can tell you that if conditions get dry or if you have low fertility, those narrow angle ones tend to be a little better. Okay. So obviously we need to look at
because they're going deeper.
Going deeper, yeah, especially where the water is.
Right.
And I think some of the nutrients like nitrogen chase the water.
Right.
So I'm hoping that we're going to be able to tell you these hybrids would be more responsive to an in-season side dress based on where the root is. They'd be more tolerant to a higher plant density, or they might have be more responsive to narrow row spacing. So pretty excited about this.
If you've got one that's more vertical, do you think if you're side dressing, you need to keep the nitrogen closer to the row?
Yeah, well, you do. What we've actually seen is the ones that have a wide angle do better with the side dress, even a wide drop, because they can access or acquire that side dress.
Is that because those roots are a little closer to the surface?
Yeah, probably closer to the surface, and I think they they spread out over a wider area, and it's easier for them to acquire the nitrogen that is side dressed. So obviously, what goes on below ground is sight unseen, sort of the last horizon. But I'm really very excited about that work. That work's done by Sam Laskonich as part of his PhD. We continue to look at fertility. When it comes to micronutrients, boron's a big player. Well, when we talked about pollination issues, I think some of that's related to boron, especially foliar applied boron. We're looking at ways to try to get that boron to be more mobile in the plant. That's the key. We continue to look at sulfur. And I don't have to tell you, sulfur is sort of the missing link when it comes to nutrients. And then we have a lot of studies looking at this, the Wild West of biologicals.
Right.
I mean, we use the term biological. I actually like to think of biological as a living organism, bacteria or fungi. And then I call biostimulant the non-living, the compounds.
Okay.
And that's a challenge, Lance, because there's so many products on the market, so many ways to do them. Claims that probably outstrip the actual science. But being optimistic, we're convinced that there is a role for biologicals. They're going to fit into 3 major roles: stress relief, nutrient availability, or the management of residue. And so a lot of our work is focusing on these areas as well.
It's probably the stress relief area that's been the hardest for me to believe is real. What is the physiology behind that being possible?
Yeah, that's the one that's the hardest to see a positive response from, because of course you have to be proactive, allegedly, before the stress occurs. I think a lot of these ones that induce or are marketed to induce stress relief, they either contain amino acids or they're alginate extracts, and I think the idea is that they can upregulate processes that involved in osmoregulation. So if I could get a jump start on osmotic adjustment, osmotic adjustment is one of the ways that plants tolerate drought, or I could do that process just a little bit better, then I might be able to tolerate dry conditions.
So does that osmotic adjustment benefit the plant as far as water utilization or getting nutrients in spite of being lacking in water?
Yeah, no. Well, I think it's more tolerating the drought, waiting for the rain.
Okay.
It's sort of like treading water. When I osmotically adjust, what I do is I accumulate solutes, and I can lower the water potential in the cells, so that I maintain a higher tissue water potential. So it's not that it's not that it going to yield higher. It's just that it's going to let the plant better tolerate those dry conditions.
And maybe enable it to be more able to take advantage of moisture when it comes.
When it comes, yeah. Like all of these
If
things.
it never comes, not going to help.
It's not going to help. It's sort of what's the strategy we're going to take, right? Why we hope the next rainstorm comes. Now one of the biological areas that I think actually holds the most promise, and these are the residue degraders. Residue degraders, stubble busters, whatever you want to call it, residue. Some people call residue trash,
Right.
Or litter.
It causes problems
When it clogs up the planter, it's trash, no doubt about it.
Or when it ties up my nitrogen, or when it makes my soil cold.
But I like to think of residue as sort of nature's biological, because there's a lot of nutrition in that residue.
Right.
And if you could only access that nutrition, why wouldn't I'd like to buy my fertilizer once and use it twice? And I think this is an area where the residue degraders come in. Lance, we're awash in residue. If you think about it, think about conservation tillage or no-till. It's all about residue, a lot of residue. Think about cover crops. Geez, the problem is they have residue that doesn't release the nutrients fast enough. Right now we're double cropping. We can double crop soybean. We can double crop soybean after wheat. That's thanks to climate change. Even in central Illinois, we're doing that. Of course, the problem is the wheat straw. Here's the biggest thing, Lance. As all growers increase yield, they have more residue.
And that's a fairly constant equation.
That's math, Lance. That has to do with something called the harvest index. So I can tell you that for every additional bushel we produce, there's 44 pounds more of dry residue. And as yields go up, guess what? More residue to manage.
Absolutely.
I mean, one way you could do is till it, but there's some disadvantages to that as well.
Yeah. So if you think about 200 bushel corn versus 300 bushel corn, which the 300 is kind of the new 200 to me.
Yeah,
it used to be 200 used to be you were proud of that. Now that's a complaint. in my line
Yeah,
of work.
that is a crop failure, Lance.
And 300 is what we're going for. Well, that's 100 bushel at 44 pounds a bushel. That's over 2 ton
more
residue.
Yeah, that's
to do.
7 tons of residue,
Yeah.
where the 200 was a little under 5 tons
Yeah.
of residue.
Yeah.
So,
Did you have a question?
There is a
Or
question.
a question.
oh, excellent.
So we should say, I'll interrupt Heather here. We are still, so Heather's got a big tote bag full of people's names that have asked questions this year. We are doing our giveaway as we always have. Heather got is it a pellet smoker? Is
Yes.
that what you call it?
Yep.
So it's a big fancy grill. I don't have the patience to run one of those, but I'd like to have a friend invite me over that likes to use theirs, and so I could eat something that was made off of one. So anyway, that's what we're giving away. And so everybody that asks a question today is going to get another entry into that. And Heather says we have one. So
First of all, Adam says hello.
okay.
Former producer of the show.
So that's right. So Adam, former student, former producer, former colleague, former lots of things. But he's one of our. I've got 3 super fans that have asked the majority of the questions from this year. So Tom, Merle, and Adam actually have cumulatively between those 3 people, they've got over half of the tickets in the bucket.
Oh boy, I'm under a lot of pressure now. I think I get to draw, right?
So if statistics and probabilities on their side, one of those 3 guys will win. But anyway.
Patrick also looks like he is somewhat of a super fan because there is a 2 by him.
Okay.
But Patrick's question is, going back to the root structure, what roots would fit better in a RZB NH3 dry application?
Mm-hmm.
If wider roots would be better for side dress.
Okay, so the question.
All right, so I need you to translate the RCB.
They're root zone banding, so they're putting on anhydrous with dry fertilizer in a strip.
On the surface or in a strip till?
Below ground.
Yeah, okay.
Which you guys are set up to do that.
Absolutely.
As well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Patrick, I think, it makes a lot of sense to me that that's going to be the scenario where you could have a smaller surface area, a narrow angle, and then a small mass, right? Why you don't need to invest a lot of energy into growing that root system if you're concentrating the nutrients around it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I think would be it. I mean, that's going to be a hybrid that I actually call a more of an offensive or racehorse type.
Mm-hmm.
And now if you had a wide angle and a big mass and a big surface area and you abandoned that nutrition, I don't think you're going to see as much of an advantage.
So I'm gonna draw another picture here.
Okay, artist Lance here.
I got a question for you because here's
thanks for that question, Patrick.
Here's where the agronomist may disagree with the physiologist for reasons of lodging.
Okay.
So here's our strip area of disturbance. You got your corn plant growing here. You've got nutrients placed down here ish. And this is the easiest place for roots to grow here in this really mellow
and that's
strip.
where they will proliferate too.
And they're headed for this fertilizer that's here. I kind of wonder if that keeps them a little narrower because they've got this really nice place to grow roots. The reason I think this is, and this was a big deal this year, I continue to see more root lodging in strip till than I do in full width tillage or no till. And I think I love the mellowness of the strip. I think strip till is the best way to grow corn, and it frustrates me that it's causing root lodging, but it's just so mellow here, especially this year. I mean, you could stick your arm into that strip up to about here, and there's no compaction there, which is great for roots and great for the plant. But sometimes I think if you've got this little compaction layer here, once the roots get through it, it gives them something to anchor to. And in this, they don't have that.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that at all, Lance. When I mention this architecture, I'm talking about the best way to access those nutrients and the highest yield. And
and a smaller rooted hybrid can take more advantage of the concentration of the band and maybe yield more because it's wasting less energy growing roots.
I mean, roots aren't free. We pay for roots and yield. I think all of your breeders will tell you, oh boy, we can develop a hybrid that doesn't ever root lodge, but of course it doesn't yield either, because it's that trade-off. So yes, lodging is an issue. I'm answering the question regarding to what the top end yield would be.
Well, and that's an area where it gets frustrating for producers and for those of us working with producers, that sometimes what happens agronomically gets in the way of taking advantage of the physiology. And I talked to your students about this last night. Diseases
Yep.
is becoming the bane of my existence, because you can do all this awesomely. You can feed the plant, you can pick the right plant, you can manage your soil, you can have great fertility, you can use starter, you can side dress, you can do all that stuff perfectly. And then if some disease, kills the plant, at half milk, you're going to be pretty disappointed in the yield, in spite of everything you've done.
You're gonna blame it on that. So that's what I call a synergy. And I can't tell you how often we've seen an improvement in growth in the front end, and then we fail to control the back end with leaf diseases or insect damage, and then we lose that advantage. Obviously, if we could keep the plant healthier longer, it's going to keep the roots active longer as well.
You and I talk a lot about yield potential. What the grower cares about is what yield is achieved.
Oh yeah, right.
And sometimes you don't achieve your potential, and it gets frustrating. Did you have a follow-up question, Heather?
No, actually, Patrick said you beat him to his follow-up question.
Oh, okay.
Well, we are thinking ahead, man.
Patrick, we'll give you another ticket just for the question that I stole from you by answering it before Heather read it.
Oh boy, that's helping stack the odds here for Patrick.
So anyway, again, appreciate the questions. I love everybody who watches Ask the Agronomist, but there's a special place in my heart for the live audience, because we get to interact with the live audience, and that was the intent of this program when we started it 5 years ago. Started this during COVID when it was illegal to have meetings at Bear, and we had some of those, but we started this as a way to, because my favorite part of any agronomic conversation with customers is we just open it up, free for all, ask what's on your mind. And so that's what started Ask the Agronomist. And a lot of people prefer to watch the program recorded because it's more convenient for them. They can watch it when they want to. Maybe they're a little bit shy and don't want to ask a question in the live chat, so they see no reason to be here live. But I still dream of a day when we've got 200 people live and we're just getting question after question after question. And I can't even talk about what I was going to talk about because we spend all of our time answering questions.
Yeah, and if you think about it, Lance, the questions we get from my standpoint, that's a good survey on what issues are on growers' minds.
Sure.
And what are the things that we need to think about researching.
Heather's got her hand up again. So.
Adam.
Okay.
Longtime friend.
Yes.
Longtime question asker.
Yes.
Are we going to be able to characterize roots quick enough to use that knowledge during their useful lifespan?
Yeah.
Great question.
So I'll take a stab at that, since I'm on the side of that cycles hybrids pretty fast. I would say this, Adam, and I think you would agree with this, and you've lived this pain, as have I. If we could characterize products better, and we could do a better job of launching products that have consistency and performance over years, a lot of the good ones hang around for 5 or 6 years. And then we have a lot of one-year wonders that lower the average lifespan of a hybrid to, statistically, it's like 1.6 years, I believe, Fred.
Yeah, not very long.
Is the lifespan of a commercial corn hybrid. But the good ones hang around. And so I think on the ones that hang around, I think we probably could. On the ones that don't hang around, you're right, Adam. By the time they know from their testing, or even if the seed industry would adopt what you guys are doing, and there are a few brands that are, you're meeting with one here later today. You told me that has kind of carved out this root space as where they think they know things that the rest of us don't. So some people have always maintained that it really doesn't matter. It's all about yield and standability, and as long as the plant's still standing and it yields well, we don't really care about the roots. But the work that Sam and you and others have done have kind of shined a light on the fact that, well, maybe we do need to care. And the seed industry can adapt to, I mean, we can characterize whatever we want to about a hybrid. You just got to have a lot of want to dig into roots, because it's a lot of work.
It is. Well, Adam, let me chime in on that. I don't see, if we can show a relatively high throughput way to characterize root, and we can show its value, that's the point of research, right?
Right.
You try and show that value. I don't see why companies couldn't, do a little minor root digging before they release a hybrid.
Yeah.
And then, I know when I look at the catalog, it's got a root score. And why couldn't that score be more encompassing?
Right.
At least that's sort of my fairy tale hope.
Because the only, historically in the seed industry, the only thing that root score has measured was lodging.
Agreed.
There's nothing about mass, nothing about size, nothing about depth, nothing about anything in that other than did the plant fall over or not.
Yeah, and what if you dug a lot of roots and Adam, I don't dig that many. I'm above the age limit where I'm legally allowed to dig roots, but I'm allowed to look at them after they come out of the ground. The root system is not as extensive as many people think. I mean, very few roots have more than an 8-inch horizontal spread. So this idea that roots cross the row, that's a myth. I mean, that maybe happened 50 years ago, but almost no roots in what I see cross the row. And I don't know if this picture will show up, but look at this variation that exists among commercial hybrids in those different root architectures.
Heather's going to use some technology to try to zoom in on that picture.
We're trying to use some technology that folks have been trying to help with us. There we go.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a few different brands here. These represent different hybrids, and those lines represent either the surface area, the angle of mass, all on a z-score to put them on the same relative basis. And there is shocking variation within each brand in the root architecture. So being a researcher, I like to think, well, that must mean something, and hopefully it's not random. And then how can we make use of it? I didn't say anything would be perfect, right? And when it comes to producing high yields, it's doing a lot of small things right, and so I think this is one of them.
Yeah, and I think there's probably some heritability in that too, genetically.
Yes, certainly in the angle.
So once maybe once you learn something about it, maybe you can correlate that back to inbreds, and maybe once you've studied it enough, there's probably some predictability in that. And modern breeding is doing a lot with data mining, predictability, probability. We've got a program that's basically predicting how awesome it would be to cross these two inbreds.
Yep.
And so there's nothing to say that we couldn't start to build root characteristics into those predictions, and maybe have an idea about this even before a product exists physically to where we could characterize it.
I mean, and if I like to think of the fact that it's roots that take up mineral nutrients and it's roots that take up water, and in a lot of this biological space we're talking about, it's roots that feed that biological. And I can tell you what we see in our research is there's always one hybrid that responds better to a practice or better to a biological, and we never know exactly why. And obviously, I think that there's a high possibility that variation in response to fertilizer treatments or biologicals might be related to what goes on below ground.
Question for you, Heather. Did we get names added to the?
I'll get those names.
Okay. How about you slide those tickets down to me?
I'm documenting this.
I've got them all.
I'm realizing here that I'm actually doing the least work here,
No, you're fine.
and Heather's like super busy. So
No, I'm good.
okay, all right. So appreciate the questions again. Keep them coming. We'll your students told me they were going to ask questions too.
Yeah, they want that smoker. I don't think they've been watching it all season, but
I told
it would be pretty
they,
suspicious if they had one question and I pulled their name out.
They always seem to want to get on when we're giving something away. I've noticed.
It does help.
That. Yeah.
Well, I think Dr. Belo has helped because we've had a lot of more than usual streamers on there.
Yeah, well, it's this, and kudos to you and thank you, Dr. Belo, for helping out, because this is every year biggest live audience, most watched episode.
Well, I am honored, Lance,
So-
and obviously, if we have information that helps our growers either interpret something they saw or better yet, plan for the future, boy, that's what it's all about.
And I get, every producer that's ever helped me with the program has always given me the feedback that the episodes are better when I have a guest. which has always been a little painful for me to hear,
It is.
because what I hear him saying is, less of you is better, and my ex-wife would testify to that. But it's always nice to have a guest. It's more fun to interact with someone, and again, I appreciate you for being our super guest here. And so what did you guys, specific to this year? I know you told me you haven't been through all of your data yet.
I haven't been through all.
You haven't seen the students present all of their data yet, so you maybe have a 30,000-foot view. But what was?
Well, I'll summarize the year,
Yeah.
and I'll say that the yields were a little better than I expected,
Yes.
given how dry it was.
Yes.
I mean, in Champaign, every single month had less than average precipitation. And if you included September in it, there was 9 inches less than average.
And to go one step further, the people that had the driest year raised the best corn this year because they had less disease.
They did have less disease. Now, in all honesty, I don't mind it being a little drier than normal in April and May, because it helps me get in and get the crop off to a better start. It's that June and July and a little bit of August that I don't want it to be less than normal. So we had some very good yields considering how dry it was.
Yeah.
I mean, I think our high yield in Champaign was 324. That's a replicated. And we had a number of hybrids and treatments that went into the 300s. Usually those are narrow rows at the higher density, with the foliar protection. But much better yields on the corn side than we expected.
And I think you set a new bean yield record for your program.
Yeah, we did.
Too,
We did.
I think.
Broke it by I think
Yeah.
4 or 5 bushels. I think.
Pretty sure it was an Asgrow bean, but we
Yeah,
don't need to
it
talk
was
about that.
early planted as grow bean.
Yeah.
I wish I could tell you. We took that bean and managed it to death, but mostly what we did is we just planted it early. I mean, and it yielded well.
This is one of those embarrassing little secrets that you sometimes don't want to share, but I think Connor did tell me that the high yield was an untreated check.
Yeah, it was. It was.
That's awful.
Beans kind of do what they want to. Beans do what they want to do.
That proves a lot of our viewers' theory that you can never tell what the hell a bean's going to do.
I agree with that. Now corn, I can tell you, responsive management. I think, Lance, the difficulty it has to do with the growth habit of the plant. Corn is a determinate plant, and that means it makes key yield decisions at key times at specific growth stages. And once it makes that decision, it has to live with it.
Yeah.
Soybean is indeterminate. Geez, it's got 16, 17 nodes, and each one of those is making a yield decision. And so it's a lot harder to manipulate that plant when it's developing flowers and pods at different times. When it comes to soybean, I think a lot of your growers know there's a quantum shift to plant soybean ahead of corn,
Right.
And that's for good reason. Now that we have a premium seed and it's treated, apparently it has the same base temperature to emerge as does corn. I'm pretty sure when I taught you, Lance, I incorrectly taught you that the base temperature, the minimum temperature for soybean to emerge was 53 and corn was 50. And that would mean plant corn first. Of course, that's so long ago. We were bin running, remember? And maybe it was true. But now it turns out that soybean also germinates at the same temperature as corn. And while uniform emergence of soybean is important, it's not as important as it is for corn.
Well, and I do think sometimes people misconstrue that. It does take, in my opinion, I don't know if you've researched this or not, I think it does take more heat units to get a soybean out of the ground than corn, but they do grow at the same low soil temperature the corn does. But it's going to take a few more days for them to get out of the ground than corn, because I do think it takes a few more heat units, which you're accumulating very slowly
At
when we plant that early.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I would have said it was roughly the same heat units to get the crop out of the ground, but maybe it has different types of emergence, so that may play into it. I'll tell you, Lance, that soybean is way more frost tolerant
Right.
than we believe.
Right.
You know, any grower knows you frost corn and it's a replant. I'll guarantee you. But you frost soybean, as long as those cotyledons are green,
Right.
there's a mechanism
Well,
for regrowth.
It's
They got axillary buds.
it's a pretty good trivial pursuit question. You know, which crop is more frost tolerant? Because you know we were always taught that corn was, because the growing point's protected.
Yeah.
Because
Remember that
underground.
nonsense?
Right. You know, but corn tissue does freeze at a higher temperature than bean tissue. So beans are more tolerant from a temperature standpoint. Now, if it gets cold enough, they are dead because the growing point gets killed, but it's got to get really cold.
Yeah.
You know, a 32, 31, 30, not going to kill them. Not going to do that.
What I've seen, Lance, is that the cotyledons still have some green, particularly if they're green near the stem. That means those axillary buds, which are at the point of attachment of the cotyledon to the stem, they're still viable.
You might actually
And
get
they're
the mythical Y
Yeah,
drop.
the Y drop. Yep. That's exactly what you get if you frost off the growing point, the apical meristem of soybean.
If I could train my deer to nip them one time and then leave them alone, or hit them with just the right frost, that's awesome.
Yeah, and then the mythical Y drop, Lance, that has two main stems.
Right.
And two main stems.
Y branch. You mean.
Yeah, Y branch.
Yeah.
I'm getting confused here with side dress.
Yeah.
But the Y branch has two main stems,
Mm-hmm.
and you know most of the yield is in the the middle of the main stem.
And it is almost 2 plants worth of yield on
Yep.
that bean.
Yep.
Did you have more questions, Heather?
We do have more questions.
Okay.
Excellent.
I think maybe you've answered Adam's question of how were the yields on the Velo farm this year. Have we kind of covered that on just talking?
I would say so.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
doing that one.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Adam. You got another point in the drawing.
Yeah, and Adam, I do want to make sure you understand that you did ask a lot of questions this year, and you got an entry for every question. You did not get any entries for all the comments you made.
Apparently, saying hi doesn't count.
Yeah, but I do love the interaction. So thank you, friend.
We've got 3 more.
Cool.
Pass that. So Mark Schultz, thanks, Mark. This fall, I heard someone claim that high, possibly excessive N rates lead to more foliar disease in corn. Question mark.
I mean, I think there is some old research on tar spot showing that tar spot thrives in really dark green, lush, healthy corn. I have seen situations where, like in ponded areas in the field where the corn's yellow and stunted, it's almost immune to tar spot. Now, I actually think that's because the sunlight's getting clear down to the bottom of the canopy, because you don't have much of a canopy. So only in that regard would I kind of sort of agree with that statement. But other than that, I don't really think I believe that. But there is something to, early planted, good stands, super healthy, super green, super canopy, density, color, lushness, moisture in lower canopy, darkness in lower canopy. I sometimes think that's why first-year corn actually gets tar spot worse than corn on corn, which blows people's minds. But we've seen that in a lot of trials, and I think it's because that first-year corn is healthier, greener, lusher, develops a little faster. It just creates a better environment for the disease down in that heavy, dense, lush canopy. So maybe I could kind of say that's not completely crazy, Mark, but that's the only way I think I could kind of agree with that statement. So I don't think lowering your nitrogen rate is going to do a damn thing to reduce tar spot. But there maybe is a convoluted way that I could, maybe kind of see what somebody might have thought they were meaning when they said that.
Yeah, Mark, I'm not sure that I would see that either. What we tend to see is a healthier plant has less response to the fungicide than a less healthy plant. So, and I think it has to do with being able to continue to produce sugars and maintain the turgidity of cells. Now, if it comes to insects, that's a whole other story. Remember when we used to have corn borers before we eradicated those with BT. And I will tell you what I would always see in our high nitrogen trials when we ran the nitrogen rate up is those plants had the corn borer. Apparently they were lusher or tasted better to the borers. So with certain insect damage, I think excess nitrogen rates may make them more predisposed to insect damage. I'm not 100% sure that's the case when it comes to foliar leaf diseases.
Mhm.
Okay, next question in the chat is from Elliott Network 3644. I think we know who that is, but
Mhm.
we're just gonna go with that. While you mentioned roots, maybe address the value of deep banded strip placement of NPK versus surface applied broadcast fertilizer.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I'll
well,
work on that.
I personally think placement is the key to a higher yield. You know, corn yield starts with nutrition, starts with and ends with nutrition. And I'm going to tell you that you know, roots don't cross the row; they only expand horizontally about 8 inches at maximum. So you know, why would I fertilize the entire soil surface when the root sits in 8 inches? And you know, there is such a thing as immobile nutrients, which means they don't move very well. And even mobile nutrients move vertically down, not sideways. So you know, if you ask me, you know, which one of the 4 R's, the right rate, the right time, the right source, or the right place,
Mhm.
I would tell you right place is by far
Mhm.
the most important. I think some sort of placement of fertilizer, you know, whether that's you know, starters placement,
Mhm.
a lot of planter placed fertilizers that works. Y drop is better placement. I'm a huge proponent of strip till or banded fertilizer as a better placement. Well, why not put that fertilizer where the root is, and you know, why not give the root an easier chance of acquiring it?
And you know, you mentioned the 4 Rs, and I know you for years and years have wanted to look at subsurface banding because that could become a requirement someday, perhaps. I mean, there are disadvantages of surface applied fertilizer from the standpoint of it's more likely to end up someplace we don't want it.
Yep.
And so, if you look at the regulatory landscape, you know, there is some either incorporation or subsurface placement of fertilizer that's required in some places. Not here yet, but you know, you guys like to be prepared with, you know, what could happen, and so you know, there are environmental benefits as well to putting the fertilizer, you know, someplace other than right on top of the soil.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you that's a big focus of our current research. True strip till. We don't have all the answers yet. We think it interacts with hybrid, with the root architecture of the hybrid. We think, I can't tell you the amount, but it makes some sense that if we concentrate the fertilizer in a band, maybe we need just a touch less than if we're broadcasting it over the whole surface of the soil.
The advantage of broadcast fertilizer is logistics and simplicity
Quick
and
and easy.
cost.
Yes, yes, correct.
And
Yes, that's the downside.
and I, you know, all of my friends that are in the retail business that run a root zone banding machine, there's a lot of days they wish they didn't have it, because it slows them down. It's very expensive. You know, the amount of money they have to charge to do it is unacceptable to some producers. But those aren't cheap machines. They're hard to maintain. You don't get across the acres.
Yeah.
And I, you know, the money I pay for the one that I hire is money well spent, because I love planting in that strip with the fertility that's in it. But logistically, I mean, it would be nearly impossible to get that done on every acre of farm.
Agreed. And
And-
then there's the issue of fall versus spring, and
Right.
shank versus coulter, and
Right.
all these questions become you know, very relevant depending on
Right.
the soil type and the weather.
Right.
Okay, we have more questions.
Cool.
What population does Dr. Bilo recommend planting 15 and 20-inch corn?
Yeah, right. So obviously the answer is it depends. It depends on your geography and what your rainfall is. I'm gonna answer that question by I'll paraphrase that that in our research, in a 30-inch row, the top end is 38,000 plants per acre. I mean, we see a sort of a cliff. We don't see a, you know, massive yield decrease when we run over 38. I mean, obviously it's more susceptible to lodging. We just don't see the yield increase. We actually have seen benefits to 20-inch rows at 38. You know, at the same density as the 30-inch row, but we also see that we can go a little higher, probably about 6,000 plants per acre higher. I mean, we're currently running 42 in our 20 inches, 36 in the 30s.
What's the correlation on roots? So
Yeah.
for every 1,000 plants or every
Yeah, as you increase the plant density, you decrease the mass or the size of the root system. And for every 1,000 plant increase, you lose 2.5% dry mass of your roots. Now, if you had the same density in a 20-inch row versus a 30, the root mass would be about 20 to 23 or 4% larger. So what we've seen in our research is that when we go to 20-inch row, we gain back the root mass of 6,000 plants
right.
as a comparable density in a 30-inch row. And I think this is one of the reasons that we've seen narrow rows work even in the southern parts of the state. It's not about the long season and the shorter day. It's about the bigger root system that can acquire nutrients or help get water.
So you can have basically with that relationship, if you've got 30-inch rows at 34,000 and 20-inch rows at 40,000 ish,
Yep.
you're going to have
Same-
about the
same size root
same
mass.
size root mass.
Correct.
Yeah, on an individual plant.
All right, we have one more question. What are your thoughts on liquid strip freshener applications? From our friend Patrick again.
So that would be going out with a spring application. Generally, it's of some sort of coulter type, and putting some liquid fertilizer, kind of surface applied, but covered up with a little bit of soil by the coulters. And then some people will actually, the term strip freshener implies that maybe you made a fall strip and then you do that in the spring to freshen the strip. You can also use those type of tools to create a strip in the spring where there was no strip before. I'm not a big fan of the freshener thing because to me, you can't make that strip better than Mother Nature left it for you in the spring. And so if you don't have a fall strip and you want to make one in the spring, there might be some benefits to that. The fertilizer application aspect of it, I like because it's another application. It's some readily available nutrient close to where the roots are going to be when the plant's little. I like all that. I don't necessarily think you can make the strip better from a soil tilth mellowness standpoint because after it goes through winter, there's nothing more perfect to plant into than that strip. And pulling a tillage tool through it in the spring, to me, is not going to make it better. Could possibly make it worse if it's a little too wet. So the fertilizer aspect of it, I like. The tillage aspect of it, I don't like so much. But that's
I sort of agree with Lance on the tillage part. I mean, but I view it as better placement. I sort of view it as a type of starter, if you will, and a chance to make sure that young plant senses the certain level of nutrients, even though the rate of uptake of nutrients is slow when the plant is small. The amount of nutrition per root, the amount that those small roots need to take up is enormous. So anything that you can place nutrients closer to those young root systems, the greater the likelihood of setting a higher yield potential. And I think that's one of the advantages of the liquid.
Yeah, and a couple of mistakes that I think I see people make sometimes would be people that use spring anhydrous, not getting some other form of nitrogen out there in the spring. It's a long time before that plant gets to it. And the other one would be people that like to side dress a lot, maybe not having enough on early.
Oh yeah, you got to have enough up front.
So there are some systems out there that I think kind of starves the plant for nitrogen when it's small, which limits its yield potential. And once you do that, you
can't get it back.
Can't get it back.
Yeah. What we've seen in our research is we got to have half the N up front to set that potential, and then sometimes we could side dress the rest. But if we just waited and side dress it all, we would lose some of that potential.
Okay, great question.
Just kind of a follow-up statement from Patrick, more so in regards to adding nutrients. So I think he was just kind of following up with what you have. One more question or statement. There's a practice called exact strip now, using an RTK guided row flow ahead of a strip till bar to place dry on top of where strips will be made.
Oh,
okay. So I think that's done in South America, isn't it?
I don't know. I know people that make strips with liquid, just shooting a stream every 30 inches and then try to plant on that stream or no-till on that stream. So, I mean, you're going to end up with some of that fertilizer in the right place. I mean, it's going to kind of get mixed into the band. Some of it's going to probably bounce out of the band. I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but that might be a way to kind of mimic what true strip till with deep banded placement does without requiring the equipment to
Yeah,
do
this is on the
that.
planter, right? It's done.
No, I think what they're talking about is like with an airflow
Oh, okay.
fertilizer rig, shooting it, not broadcasting it, but shooting a stream of dry fertilizer directly
Yeah.
every 30 inches, and then you come back with a toolbar after that, put your anhydrous on, and it's going to incorporate some of that dry fertilizer into that strip, I think. Patrick, if you could confirm, is that kind of what you're talking about?
This was
Or maybe that was somebody else. That's
somebody else.
Okay.
Agger 838.
Okay, so whoever it was, did I accurately describe what you're talking about?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I still view it as a little bit better placement compared to broadcast.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
concentrating
I would agree.
a little bit more in the root zone. I mean, there's more than one way to better place fertilizer, and dry fertilizer is a lot easier to handle than liquid. They can make blends that play nice together. So
that would be 2 trips instead of 1, but your first pass would be cheaper and easier. And it is going to simplify your anhydrous application because you're not fighting with the dry, during that application. So I see some potential for that. There's not a lot of airflows out there either. That technology, hasn't necessarily taken over. Kind of for the same reason. It's those machines are a little more expensive, a little more maintenance, but I do like that method of application. One thing that I see that application helping with would be the edge effect on fields where we never get a full rate of fertilizer out to the edge, and we got about 15 feet around the outside of every field that looks like ass because it's starving for potash primarily. And that would at least it won't allow you to make up for 40 years of under fertilizing the outside strip, but you would at least start putting a full rate on clear out to the edge of the field. Because with a traditional spreader that requires the overlap, you'd have to spread fertilizer to the middle of the road to get close to a full rate on to the edge of the field, which most of you would complain about that if your fertilizer applicator was fertilizing to the middle of the road or to the neighbor's field. But I've always joked that we just need to put a sheet of 4x8 plywood on the right next to the spinner fan on a truck, and it hits that and just falls right there, and you just drive the tire right next to the fence, and you catch all that and drop it right there on the outside, and you get a full rate, more than a full rate, on right to the edge of the field. So good questions. Appreciate those coming in. So what else did I have on my list of notes, Heather, that I haven't?
So one other topic that we really haven't touched on yet are diseases.
Yes.
They seem to be more and more of a yield limiting factor in both corn and soybeans.
Right.
What do we do to increase yields that don't produce results we want because of premature death due to various diseases, hot nights, the tassel wrap?
Right. So I'd had a list of things that I thought were yield limiting.
It's a long list there.
Yeah. So several of those things we've talked about this year. So from tassel wrap to the hot nights to, we had lots of days that it was either hazy or smoky or foggy or smoggy or whatever you want to call it. We didn't have great sunlight. And typically, I think you would agree with this, lack of solar radiation is not our yield limiting factor. But if everything else is awesome, maybe it could be occasionally.
Yeah, it's only going to be the limiting yield factor when we've already closed the canopy. If we haven't closed the canopy, it doesn't really matter at that point. But once the canopy's closed, yes, clouds lower the photosynthesis.
Yeah. And in parts of the state that were really wet, when you guys were begging for rain, I mean, I've got, most of my area was pretty wet from June When did we go to Orlando? Like the
Middle of
18th?
June,
And
yes.
just to be clear, that was a national sales meeting. Heather and I did not go to Orlando.
I'm glad you clarified that.
Just in case anybody's confused by that. Heather and I and about 1,000 other people were in Orlando in the middle of June. And so from then till August 1st, I had 12 inches plus of rain
Wow.
in Western Illinois.
Wow.
And we grew a lot of southern rust and grew a lot of tar spot. And we had a lot of cloudy days. And we had a tremendous amount of tip back in spite of no moisture stress whatsoever. And it was either the hot nights or the cloudy days.
Cloudy days would
one
be
of the
my
two,
guess, yeah.
You know, because
And both.
and you know, and we had some good yields because those kernels got deeper and bigger, and the plant compensated. But you know, we didn't have a lot of 280, 290, 300 bushel corn, even though we had a lot more moisture. And I think there were times in July, which is a pretty critical month for corn, the roots might have appreciated a little more oxygen than they had because they were in we didn't have water standing, but we had saturated soils
Yeah.
a lot of days in July. And that's not good. And so I think we had too much rain at times. We had too much disease, which was brought on by the moisture. And then we had a lot of days where we didn't see the sun. And none of those are particularly good for maximizing yield.
Yeah, especially corn yield.
Right. So the disease question, and I've gotten this a lot from a couple of my viewers. They're very frustrated. So there's a disease complex in soybeans that we call diaporthy, and there's some disagreement amongst soybean pathologists what these diseases are and whether they're associated with each other or not. But stem canker, pod and stem blight, cercospora, and what am I missing? A disease we call zone lines, which some people argue we think charcoal rot and zone lines are two different things. There's a lot of pictures in a lot of agronomy guides that are showing a picture of what we call zone lines, and they say it's charcoal rot. So there's some disagreement out there, but those are all soil-borne pathogens. They're not foliar. So our R3 fungicide application in soybeans that we love, not going to help. And we're running into fields where you just got these big dead areas in a soybean field, and they didn't have SDS and they didn't have white mold, but you can find pod and stem blight, you can find cercospora, you can find zone lines, you can find anthracnose, you can find a lot of crud. Soybean roots are dead, decomposed, plant just died early. It's a lot like crown rot in corn to me. You have a root rot, a root infection that kills the roots. The plant's under severe stress when it's hot and dry, and it just
gives up,
dies. And those spots, combine gets real quiet, fuel efficiency goes way up, yield goes way down, and you're going through a spot where your beans are making 40. And you can see that dead area ahead of you going through the field in the combine. You come out the other side of it, and they're back up to 85 or 90 again. Just huge, yield loss in those areas. Crown rot doing the same thing in corn, and there's definitely an interaction between root health and foliar health. And if you've got tar spot and southern rust on your leaves and crown rot in your roots, that's a bad combination. And we get premature death due to disease, and then all of the wonderful things you've done all year long, picking the right hybrid, managing it right, feeding it right, everything you've done right kind of ends up being all for naught because the damn thing dies before it's done producing its yield. And that's, finding a product or management to prevent those things from happening.
Would you say that's an instance of environment and genetic interaction?
Yes.
It just happened to be
In a bad way.
that genetics that was used in her and the particular environment led to it.
Yeah. And we are from the
hard to control, by the way.
From the genetic side of things, I mean, we are aggressively selecting hybrids with better tolerance to tar spot, better tolerance to crown rot. We've already got stuff that's got pretty good tolerance to southern rust, but southern rust is a kind of a new disease
Kind of blows in, right?
For some people sometimes that they haven't experienced it before. So It's really difficult to find a hybrid that is resistant to crown rot, southern rust, and tar spot, all three in the same hybrid.
Yeah, oh, yes.
And that's the combination of diseases that northwestern Illinois in particular had last year. And that's why the northwestern part of the state, even though it's got some really good soil, raised the worst corn this year. Maybe not as bad as deep southern Illinois that was flooded for 4 months
and then dry,
and then dry for the next 4 months. So worst case scenario for you poor guys. But there's some $20,000 an acre ground in northwestern Illinois that struggled to make 200 bushel corn this year because it died early of a combination of diseases.
Largely because of the weather.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And that's there's not a product you can buy. There's not a product there's things you can do that help it, but there's not really something you can do today that just absolutely prevents that. And so that that disease issue, both corn and beans, tends to be, I think, in our moist climate, productive soils, a lot of times disease ends up being a pretty significant yield limiting factor. And to your point, I think I agree with that. That is an interaction between the genetics you plant and the environment that they're subjected to.
Right, and it's sort of the price you pay for the weather you have and the area you live in.
Yeah. So anything else on our list, Heather, that we haven't touched on?
You know what might be fun, because we're getting on 9 o'clock here, and
Okay.
I'm not sure how long Dr. Bilo has for us today. Maybe what is new for 2026, maybe some of the studies, if they've started thinking about that, what they're going to be looking at, might be kind of fun as we wrap things up.
So you mentioned your work does kind of vary based on the interest of your students. You bring in new students. Old students move on. So Sam's going to finish up,
He is.
I think. Do you have somebody that's planning on continuing his root work, or does that retire with Sam?
No, it doesn't retire with Sam. We'll continue that root work. I know Jared Fender, who's looking at our strip till work, is going to try to head up our root work, particularly how the root architecture impacts the type of strip tillage we use.
Right.
So we'll still do that. I know that we're going to look heavily at this residue management situation.
Ava was telling me last night about the residue bags.
Yep.
1,100 of them.
Oh, geez, yeah. And then you have to pick those up and
they said with the snow there was 2 they couldn't find. I don't know if they told you that.
They did not. I did not hear that, but I'm not surprised by that.
They were out there trudging around in the snow, trying to find these bags of residue, and there was a couple of them that went missing, I guess.
So we're going to have a student that looks heavily at residue. We're hoping that's Ava, but if it's not her, we'll have another student. And then the question becomes, when do I manage the residue? Do I manage it in the fall? Do I manage it in the spring? Do I use a biological compound? Do I mix it with a little ammonium sulfate? So managing residue is going to be a huge factor. I mean, last year, 2 years ago, I had my highest ever corn yield. And that meant more residue. And then I no-tilled my soybean into that high corn residue. That was not a good day, if you think about it. So residue management is something we're going to continue to look at, not only as a function of what the yield of the previous crop was, but also with cover crops. I mean, if you look at a cover crop, it's all about the residue. I know we're going to pay a lot more attention to seed treatment, and whether these are biological seed treatments or micronutrient seed treatments. I'm going to tell you, one of the most successful seed treatments we put on soybean is a little bit of molybdenum, because that helps the nodule activity. It helps the plant acquire nitrogen and sulfur. So I know that we're gonna focus one of our students on seed treatment. We'll continue to look at the interaction of varieties and management like we always do. I think most growers know that I'm a proponent of narrow rows, so we'll continue to try and look at how can we manage narrow rows and what the top end of a narrow row is. I know we're going to look at some foliar nutrition, particularly boron. There's some thought that the tassel wrap may have been partially related to not enough boron. I know that boron is immobile in the plant. We're trying to overload the plant so we can make it a little bit more mobile. So I think that's true of both corn and soybean. And then we'll also look at we have a soybean project looking at tissue testing and how well that actually, well, first of all, what leaf to sample and how well that relates to yield.
Couple questions. One of them related to boron. So I actually work with a retailer who was very aggressive in his boron because he's frustrated that every tissue test he pulls shows the plants are deficient in boron. I see that too. Corn, soybeans, both. There seems like there's never enough boron on the plant. He put boron in his strip. He applied boron in his spring fertilizer application. He put boron on foliar 2 or 3 times.
He likes boron.
And every single tissue test, in spite of all that, still said the plant was deficient in boron. So he could not get it into the plant. He put a hell of a lot of it in the field, but he didn't feel he got it into the plant. So might be something to try to find a solution to. I have, and I'll probably insult some people with this comment, I prefer to feed nutrients through roots rather than through leaves. Now, maybe with a micro, maybe we can get enough into the leaf to do some good. Maybe, I don't know. I've also kind of wondered too how much contamination of tissue tests we get when you spray something on a plant.
Is it on the surface?
And then a couple weeks later, you take tissue samples, and do they really get that washed off of the sample when they process it, or is it in the leaf or on the leaf? If it's just on the leaf, it's not really in the leaf. And so I would like to be sure when I'm doing that tissue sampling, or some people are doing sap testing, which sap testing would probably be better because if it's in the sap, it's in the plant. If you're just testing the tissue, is it contaminated by the application that you made?
Yeah, and I'll tell you another thing we see with tissue tests is something called growth dilution. So a lot of times if the plant is really growing, the concentration will come back as deficient, but actually the level of nutrient is not limiting the growth. I agree with you, Lance. I think the best way to take up nutrients is through the root. That's the normal process. That's how plants are designed. But often there's soil conditions or root conditions that make that nutrient unavailable. And then maybe a foliar spray, particularly with a micronutrient, might help. And remember, I think this is also true of determinant plants like corn that, again, make these yield decisions. And so presumably I could alter the plant with a foliar application at a key time when it's making that yield decision. I think the jury's still out on that. But if there's any foliar micronutrient that might be effective, I'm going to say it's boron. Corn.
And I've also heard the connection. There's a lot of people that talk about boron being involved in, pollination,
clearly,
things like that. So the idea that there would be a benefit to boron around pollination time, which is an easy time to put it on because that's when we're spraying fungicide in a lot of cases.
I actually think that's a little too late. I think you need to have loaded the boron up a little before then.
So how far before?
Let's face it, you're not gonna make an extra pass just to spray boron. So it's gonna go on with your post-emergence herbicide or some other practice. So that's the difficulty of it.
Would if you're doing a Y drop, would a surface band application?
Might have. Boron's quite mobile, actually.
Yeah. Okay. So you're talking about residue earlier, and I remembered, and we've talked about this field on Ask the Agronomist a lot before. I had a bean field, started as a cornfield. The year that we planted corn on this field, we were having some problems with the planter, and so the planter was just shutting off occasionally and not dropping any seed. And so I ended up with these little rectangles scattered around the field where no corn was planted. And they were small enough I didn't go back and replant them. I just left them. And so it was basically fallow for the year because it didn't grow a lot of weeds. It's a fairly clean field. Next year, we no-till soybeans into that field, did no vertical tillage, nothing, just planting 15-inch rows on a slight angle into virgin, untouched, standing corn stalks, and
With those blank areas too.
with those blank areas. And so the blank areas were no-tilled, too, no tillage whatsoever, but there was no residue there. And I've got pictures, I've got NDVI imagery. I don't have yield because they were too small to take yield off of, but all through the vegetative growth stages, about a 50% increase in vegetative growth, about a 30% increase in stand, tremendous increase in plant-to-plant uniformity. They flowered 2 weeks earlier. They were usually 1 to 1.5 growth stages ahead. I mean, you would have thought I moldboard plowed those little squares. They were so different than those no-till beans. Only difference was no residue.
Yeah, and that's probably because the residue is immobilizing nutrition and or interfering with seed soil contact and
yeah.
changing soil temperature
Yes,
and water
all that,
infiltration.
you know.
It's a whole host of things.
And even if you had, tilled that residue, it would all still be there.
Yeah.
It would just be modified.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. The residue management thing, as yields climb, as we try to do less tillage. I mean, there's been a bit of a trend in recent years
to go back to tillage.
I mean, tillage. Yep. There's a guy I work with him. Raises some tremendously good soybeans on his home farm. Their soybean system is, and this would make a lot of people cough. They harvest corn, they spray a biological on the corn residue, they vertical till the field, and then they deep rip it.
Wow.
So he's doing 3 different things to manage residue on the same acre. And then they plant, then they'll work that ground in the spring. So it's full tillage. It's not a moldboard plow, but pretty close. And then they raise some awesome soybeans.
He gets those beans off to a real nice start.
Yeah, they plant early. And one thing that I've struggled with, there's 2 things in soybeans that I see a little bit of a trend that bothers me. I'm an old no-tiller. My dad started no-tilling in the 70s. I grew up on a no-till farm. I did my master's research on nitrogen application and a no-till corn system. I've been a dyed-in-the-wool no-tiller virtually my whole life. But it's undeniable to me that you can't just plant soybeans into cold, wet corn stalks the 1st of April and get the full benefit out of early planted soybeans.
Nope.
And so this early planting trend is pushing some guys towards more tillage. Sometimes it's just super aggressive vertical till to where it really isn't vertical till, it's just tillage. And in some cases, it's, real true tillage with like a primary, secondary tillage pass. So I see that trend going on. The other thing that's frustrating, I also sometimes think I see an advantage to 30-inch rows in those early planted high yield soybean conditions. Yeah. And I don't know if it's sunlight and branching or what's driving that. It wouldn't bother me if 30s yielded the same as 15s, but when 30s are better than 15s, that does kind of bother me.
We've clearly seen that the advantage of narrow rows goes away when we plant earlier.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. I happily we haven't seen a yield increase, but the advantage to 30s that we would see, or the 15s that we'd see if we planted later, goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Now you talk about we want to grow high corn yields, and if corn's the crop before our soybean, and as I told you, every additional corn bushel is 44 more pounds of residue. That's going to continue to be a problem. Tillage, or some of the aggressive tillage you talk about, is a potential solution. The other, I think, possibility is some of these biologicals to help control or manage the residue. And I know in our research that we have out now, we'll combine the biological with both tilled and not tilled. Mm-hmm. So we'll see if maybe the biological residue degrader could serve as a replacement to that tillage, or if tillage is with tillage if it's not necessary.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys do anything with Preceon this year? Were you doing any short corn work?
We did have short corn Preceon work.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think I'm a fairly short guy, so I love the idea of short corn. I think it has I think it has the certainly the lodging resistance. If you
Mhm.
look at the lower stem, it has the ability to get ground rigs over it. I think there's some potential yield advantage by saving energy and not growing stalk
Mhm.
and diverting that energy to the air.
Mhm.
So
That's something and there might be one of the guys that might be watching is a good customer that likes to tease me about this. He thinks Bayer's spending money shortening the wrong crop. He wants shorter soybeans that do
interesting.
not lodge. And I would tend to agree that soybeans waste a lot of energy growing
Stem as well.
stem and forage that's doing nothing
Yep,
to
yep.
make pods, seeds, flowers,
Tall,
anything. And
tall crops does not
it-
mean high yield when it comes to soybean.
and if you could, somehow train or control that bean to invest its resources into blooms, pods, and seeds
Instead of stem.
that would be good.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with him, because again, how many times have you seen a really tall crop that doesn't have any pods on it?
Yeah, 80 bushel fodder, 40 bushel soybeans. One of my favorite
And a
sayings.
lot of that is related to too high a population.
Yes.
Now
Yes.
we're running the population down, and I think most growers recognize if you plant early, you could back that seed rate
Yeah.
off a little bit,
Right.
so that they don't compete with each
Yeah,
other and grow leggy.
The temptation is to
Put more in
put
because it's
more
colder.
because it's cold and you're afraid
Yep,
they're not
yep.
going to come up. And
that is the trade-off, by the
I
way.
tell guys all the time, we need fewer plants, and you need to be more comfortable looking at what you think is a bad stand of beans, because what you think is a bad stand is probably closer to optimal than you realize.
Yeah.
When you're used to looking at what 120 or 130 or 140,
And then you
plants
see
looks
80,
like,
you're-
80
you're-
looks
oh,
pretty
it looks
bad,
bad, but it-
especially in a high residue with corn stalks,
which is probably what you're going to have.
right. And so, and I challenge guys. We talk about getting seeding rates down, and some guys are getting down to 110, 120 for a planting rate. Some
Mhm.
people going even lower than that. But I do have some guys that they're planting 120, but they don't really like how 100 looks. And if you think you need more than 100, you might need to plant more than 120. You don't need more than 100. You don't even need 100. But we got to get used to leaving stuff alone. We replant a lot of acres every year and it's hell, we're giving them the seed. They're getting paid by two different insurance policies to replant. So, I mean, it looks lucrative to replant, but I think in a lot of cases we're losing yield by replanting.
Yeah, because you're later and you're doing damage.
Right.
There.
So you had 75,000, which would have been fine. You put another 80 into it, and then you end up with too many plants, uneven. You run over the best ones you had.
I agree completely.
So you just we gotta. And
Hard to leave it stand up.
I'm not trying to not give you your replant seed, but we replant a lot of acres of beans every year that did not need to be replanted.
My guess is if it's 80,000, you should not be replanted.
Yes, yeah. And what some guys, and I think I argue with guys that if it was a uniform 80, they would agree. They claim they would agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they would, but they claim that. But we've got these spots where there's 60. And if your 60 spots are not large,
even that's good
fine.
Enough. I agree.
That's fine. Just leave it alone. But we got some work to do there. Hey, one of your trials that you didn't do this year. This goes back to 23 and 24.
Okay.
I never did. I actually asked Connor about it last night. He sent me the data. So
good.
So
Well,
I've
hopefully you know the answer when I don't know it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you're not, but I until last night I hadn't seen how the second year.
Oh, I know what you're going to tell me.
Of your phantom research, yield research came out.
Right, we've done it twice.
So 2 years, one kind of a low yield, around 200 bushel, one very high yield, 300 bushel.
Yeah.
Tell us what you saw.
Yeah. So I get this question quite a bit. Virtually every grower I talk to is convinced there's phantom yield loss.
Yes.
And every one of them has an example where we started harvesting the field, we had to come back to it later, and we lost 20 bushels. I can tell you unequivocally, there is no phantom yield loss on the plant. It's not respiration. I mean, we went through a really detailed every week hand harvest, hand shell. Now there is yield loss, combine loss. So we, I also can tell you that we don't lose yield in the dryer. We tried that
Right.
as well.
Right.
I'm sure Connor mentioned that.
Yep.
So the idea that on the plant, as it dries down, it loses yield due to respiration.
Right.
That is simply not occurring.
Right.
We are losing yield due to combine loss.
Right. Right.
And you know, and that combine loss is related to moisture, and it's related to shattering and
Right.
and that. But
We definitely saw that this year because we had a lot of corn, especially in the heavily diseased part of the state. Came out of the field at 12, 13,
Oh, geez, yeah.
11,
Yeah,
10.
yeah, and
You know, I've never seen 10% corn harvested in the field until this year. And
Yeah,
you're
because
losing, I mean, lots of pounds of just
it's
water
bouncing
there.
everywhere, right? When
But
you're-
yeah, it's shelling at the head. You've got, plants deteriorated. Usually when your corn gets that dry, it's probably because something bad's going on. So you're probably picking it up off the ground. You got ear loss. You got kernel loss. It's just awful. And the way I like to say it is, yield loss is absolutely real, but there ain't no phantom.
No.
It's all physical, mechanical. You just didn't get it in the grain tank.
Yep. Or
is
you
where it
didn't
went.
adjust the combine. I hear a lot of high yield guys say, well, we get our highest yield when we're harvested at 25 or 24%. By gosh, Lance, we've seen something I call phantom yield gain. When we harvested it when it was 25, or it actually wasn't done.
Right.
I
Right.
mean,
yeah. Well, the large grower has invented something they call gray layer. You know what that is?
Oh, that's when it's almost done.
That's when it's almost
Yeah.
mature.
Yeah.
And that's the green light go when you get to gray layer. I do think that we lose a lot of yield because a lot of stuff we can't get it harvested timely. And
as it sits longer in the field, let's face it, you have animals and more plants fall over and birds and
right. And
and
I was
you name it.
teasing Connor. So there's two things that a young man like him, two arguments he should not get into. One would be test weight has something to do with yield.
Oh boy, yeah.
And the other one would be phantom yield loss. I said, when you're as old as Fred and I, maybe you can get away with challenging the perceptions that people have. But when you're starting out, the quickest way to convince some people that you're just an idiot is if you don't believe in phantom yield loss or test weight having something to do with yield.
What I've seen is phantom yield loss is a U.S. thing, because whenever I've traveled outside of the U.S. where they grow corn, in South America or in Asia, that never heard of it. There's no such thing. That doesn't exist, but it certainly exists in the U.S.
The other thing that contributes to it, and Heather, before she was in her role she's in now, was one of our digital ag people. So she worked with field yield monitors and that sort of stuff. There's also a lot of situations where, maybe the calibration was different for 25 versus 14% corn.
Of course, yes.
And
absolutely,
it's reading the yield differently more than the yield is changing.
Yeah. That's probably true.
So there's a lot of technology influenced phantom yield loss too. That maybe it was overestimating a tad when it was wet, and maybe it's underestimating a tad when it's dry, and so that yield difference is getting.
Yep, I can tell you, we hand harvested different hybrids,
Right.
different weeks, dried them all down.
Because you did different genetics, different maturities, different high test weight grain, low test weight,
the whole bit.
Yep. And I don't think you didn't even find a single hybrid that showed a trend towards
No,
that, did
it
you?
was random, probably random.
Yeah.
There was a few, any one that may have gone down or looked like it went down the first year. It was the other way the second year. It was just random. So I know we have not probably set this to bed yet, but
Right.
In our research, hopefully that'll be on our website soon. We cannot detect phantom yield loss on the plant.
Right.
It's a machine thing.
Right. So that's one of my favorite studies that you guys have done over the years, and really well designed, and and to prove it, some people are critical of hand harvested trials because that's too artificial. Well, if you machine harvest it, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. There's going to be yield loss. That's what's causing yield
the
loss.
goal is it being lost on the plant from respiration, through the husks or something like that. And by the way, this is one of these ideas that's come up with questions from your audience and the reviewers that we constantly get.
Right.
That, and sometimes those myths are hard to dissuade. I don't have to tell you that test weight is not related to kernel weight,
Right,
and
right.
related to moisture completely. So
Right.
that's another myth that's really hard to put to bed.
Right. Right. Yeah. I've always joked with Adam. I want, and Adam and I enjoy the test weight argument with each other. We both agree, and we both get frustrated with people that don't agree with us. But I've always wanted it on my tombstone that says test weight has nothing to do with yield.
Heavily, you're still alive.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't even bought my tombstone yet, so I'll do that someday. But anyway, any more questions, Heather? Well,
No more
we've been
questions in the chat.
bantering here.
One other thing from your list of questions
Yeah.
that you sent me, I'm not sure if we really got into this earlier. Do we want to talk about late drought stress?
Okay,
Have
yeah.
we really kind of dove into that yet?
Yeah. So and this kind of relates to. I mean, how good would your corn have been had you had an extra inch or two of moisture?
It isn't my corn; it's my soybean that would have been a lot better if I.
You don't think your corn would have been better too?
Yeah, it would have been, but we measure kernel weights and kernel numbers, so we measure yield components, and I can tell you uniformly what we're seeing in soybean is the seed weights are lower than normal.
Yeah.
Normally a soybean seed is going to weigh 150 milligrams. That's the average weight. And we pulled out a lot, 120, 130,
Right.
almost universal.
Right.
So, boy, if I could just had another inch of rain in the middle of August on the soybean, that would have been worth.
Yeah.
Geez, 5 bushels is my guess.
You get kind of greedy there because Connor told me you had, was it 125?
We did.
Was that your?
We did, but we also had a lot of soybean had seed numbers that they should have been 90. And they came out at 75 or 80,
right?
And those are all due to lower seed weights. I mean, they had the pods. They had the pods at the top of the plant. They weren't one bean pods. They were just smaller seed.
And there was, I would say, across my territory, which I'm West Central Illinois, I've met a handful of guys that set a new farm yield record for soybeans in 25, but most people, relative to the previous 2 years, were a little disappointed
because the crop looked better than it. I mean, pod wise, the pod numbers were there. Right. The indicator for high soybean yield is those pods at the top nodes. Mm-hmm. If you have 3 or 4 pod clusters near the top, you get all excited. I mean, I saw a lot of that, and then the yields were slightly disappointing. Mm-hmm. I mean, we did have some good soybean yields. Obviously, variety makes a way bigger difference on soybean yield than growers think. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest thing they could do. I mean, I don't have to tell you, there's a 30 or 40 bushel difference between varieties at a given site.
Right.
Hard to wrap your head around.
Well, and the challenge, and we kind of talked about the interaction between genetics and environment. It's not consistent every year which ones are at the top either.
Yeah, that's why you got to spread your risk.
That's the struggle we have is which ones do you pick? And your data always shows that if you pick the right ones, oh man, good for you. But it's hard to do that a year in advance. So anything else, Heather?
Nope.
So all right, well,
I think we hit most of your questions.
Okay, so great questions today. Appreciate
really do appreciate it.
Appreciate that. I'm gonna give Dr. Bilo being here credit for all the extra questions. Not the nice prize that we're gonna give away here in a minute, but we are getting close to when we're gonna ask you to reach your hand in the.
I hope I pull one of my students' name out of there.
In the tote bag there.
Which would be completely random, by the way.
So yes.
Wow, look at all these.
So just reach in there.
Okay. I'm mixing them up well.
Yeah.
I have the winner here.
Yeah.
Would you like to?
Okay.
Do you know that gentleman?
I do. So this is one of Adam's colleagues now.
Okay, it's not Adam, by the way.
Yeah, it's not Adam. So that means it's not Adam. So this is not one of the 3 people that had 10 times as many chances as everybody else. So Ross Dombacher. So Ross asked, I think maybe 2 or 3 questions this year.
Congratulations, Ross.
So he did have multiple in here. And so Ross, we will, Heather and I will be in charge of getting you. I don't know what brand it is. You probably don't even have it yet. She's going to be an Amazon shopper, and she's going to.
Probably just need an address and we'll ship it.
Yeah. So Ross, we'll get an address from you and we'll ship it to you. So So I will be back. So see, I haven't been canceled yet. So season 6 starts January 15th. So we'll give you a little break here over the holidays. So everybody have a wonderful holiday season with your family, hopefully, and hope Santa treats you well. So Fred,
Let me echo
Ian.
that. Happy holidays to everybody. Lance, it seemed like it was just yesterday that we were here doing it again. Hopefully, I'll be back
Yeah.
in 2026 and drawing another name.
Yeah, and
So,
I'm sure
I wish everybody a great upcoming season.
2026 will be different, as we always say. And we'll never run out of things to talk about on Ask the Agronomist. When I first started this, people challenged me. They're like, well, do you really want to do it every 2 weeks? You're gonna run out of stuff to talk about. Hasn't happened yet, and I don't think it will next year either. So again, thank you, Heather, for your help here
Appreciate
today.
it.
Hopefully you enjoyed the broadcast. Those of you that watch it later recorded, hopefully you have as much fun as Dr. Bilo and I did. So we'll be back with you in January. Happy holidays. God bless.
Went fast.
It does. Always does.